The events of the 1620s present historians of the 30 Years' War with their greatest problem. On the one hand, the unprecedented success of the Catholic powers must be explained. On the other, the tortuous course of the Protestants' road to defeat must also be analyzed. The latter task is the more difficult, because of the fragmentation of the Protestants' efforts. Until 1621, to be sure, there was a single focus to the struggle, the question of Bohemia. But in that year, the war between Spain and the Dutch Republic resumed, and Protestant Sweden attacked Catholic Poland. Although the progress of both these new conflicts was intimately connected with the evolution of the war in Germany, on the whole, until the end of the decade, they were conducted separately. Furthermore, in 1624, France intervened for the first time. She became involved in two of the existing wars, and she started an entirely new one of her own in northern Italy and the Alpine valleys. But her participation was always intermittent and unpredictable. First, there were the internal disorders caused by dissident nobles and militant Protestants. Then there were the struggles of various power groups for control of affairs. Both made a consistent foreign policy almost impossible to implement. But France by no means stood alone in inconsistency. Most of the states which intervened in the war at this time also felt doubt about their grounds for doing so. Some political leaders perceived an international conspiracy ranged against them and aimed at extirpating not only their liberty, but also the entire religion to which they belonged. Others, however, claimed that the war was fought only for the sake of Frederick of the Palatinate, either to win him the title King of Bohemia, or later to win back his electoral status. Factions which espoused these rival views could be found at almost every court of Europe. In France, the Catholic extremists, known as the Devils, called for intervention in favor of the emperor in order to stem the Protestant tide, while in England, the Puritan leaders in Parliament urged their reluctant king to fight manfully for the Protestant cause. It was the same elsewhere, in Spain, in the Netherlands, in Sweden, in the princely courts of Germany, even in those of the principal antagonists, Frederick and Ferdinand. The interventionists and the isolationists wrestled. And since both interpretations were justifiable, and indeed seemed from time to time to be justified by events, no individual faction was able to monopolize the foreign policy of its government for long. That is why the course of European diplomacy in the 1620s, and to a lesser extent in the 1630s, is littered with repudiated negotiations and unratified treaties. That is also why the history of the first decade of the 30 Years' War is so impossibly complicated.